Good evening and welcome to the January 6th, 2022 Parks and Recreation Commission's regular video meeting. I am Jody McCarthy, Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.10 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order, tonight's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff and consultants Emily Moon, Steve Dew, Andy Bennett, and Anna Spooner are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones. Will the city staff please call the roll?
Chair McCarthy.
Here.
Vice Chair Struck.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Birkenwald. Commissioner Westberg.
Here.
Commissioner Markson.
Here.
Commissioner Burstein.
Present.
Great. Commissioners, before we start the business of tonight's meeting, here are a few rules to help the meeting run smoothly. If a commissioner has a question, please use the raise hand feature. I will do my best to recognize commissioners in the order in which hands are raised. Everyone will be asked to limit themselves to one question and to one clarifying question if necessary, so that each commissioner has a chance to ask a question before a commissioner is given another chance to ask a question. Additionally, prior to speaking, please state your name for those listening in on the meeting. Tonight's agenda will not include in-person public appearances in accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order. However, individuals wishing to speak live during the appearances portion of our meeting may do so by telephone or using the Zoom teleconferencing application, provided, however, they registered their desire to speak with the city admin staff by 4 p.m. today. Our city admin staff will call on you by name or telephone number when it is your turn to speak. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the Parks and Recreation Commission. All remarks will be addressed to the commission as a whole and not to individual commission members or staff members. If any person makes personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the commission, you may be asked to leave the meeting. When it is your turn to address the commission, be sure to speak audibly and state your name for the record. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. I will provide you with a 30-second and 15-second warning when your time is about to expire. City staff, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the commission?
Yes, we have Paul Summer. I'll move him over right now.
Unmute. There, can you hear us? Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Let me start the video, make sure the video is on. Here we go. You can see us too, right?
Yes.
Okay, are you ready for us?
Ready.
We just wanted to vocalize what I had written a note to everybody about the fact my wife and I, like a lot of our friends, have converted from other sports to pickleball. We were playing racquetball at the JCC for years and years and years, and now we're playing pickleball. And because outdoor pickleball during this weather is not possible, we're playing at the community center. And so we were a little shocked when we saw that the hours for available courts went from about 19 hours a week to about 6 or 8 hours a week, which is dramatic. So if it wasn't so dramatic, it wouldn't have been a big deal, but that's a big deal. And so we're just wondering, is it because there's so many people from off island that come and make it so that the island people who live here can't play? And has it been considered that maybe a general fee would be higher for off islanders, just say $7 or $8, where residents might be $5 as it is now, and then maybe $4 for seniors. The senior discount seems to have gone away this year. And that's kind of our question.
Yep.
That's it. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Um,
This is Ryan. I'm gonna try to connect. Oh, there's Raven.
Yep, I am moving over Jessica Prince.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Prince, and I'm going to speak on the same topic that Paul just spoke about. I first want to say that both the Parks Commission and city staff have been very generous and good to pickleball in the past. However, the latest schedule change for the winter seems to have negatively impacted pickleball more than some of the other programs. Everyone who plays pickleball at the community center fully understands that you have quite a task in balancing the many constituents and priorities. And we're certainly sensitive to the fact that you can't accommodate every program to its fullest right now. I also understand you're down a couple of staff members, which makes it even a little more difficult right now. Given that, we are absolutely not asking for any special treatment, but just to be treated equitably along with the other programs so that the decreases or changes are about the same for all the popular programs. So when you take a look at the gym utilization from the fall to the winter, in general, it's gone down about 23% for all the activities. And I know that that's because you've added new programs back. We have longer transitions between the programs. I also see that there's no activities on Wednesday mornings, and also that we're closing earlier on some days. But even given that, the pickleball community took a little harder hit. So I want to lay out 6 items specifically where we've been impacted more than other programs. Okay, number 1, pickleball used to be available to play 5 days a week, and now we've been cut back to only 3 days a week. Volleyball, by contrast, still has 4 days a week. Basketball only lost 1 day. Number 2, as Paul mentioned, our drop in total hours went from 19.5 hours a week down to 6. That's a 69% decrease in our hours. And like I said, if you look at overall gym utilization, it only went down 23%, but we got hit more than 3 times that. By contrast, basketball only lost 33% of their hours. Volleyball only lost 35% of their hours. Badminton lost 59%.
you have 30 seconds.
Yep. We've also, the sessions have been gone from, we had a 6-hour session, a 4-hour session, and 2 3-hour sessions. Now we're down to 3 2-hour sessions. And it really makes it hard because pickleball is very sociable to really establish the community when we have so few hours. So I ask, when you do make the next schedule change, to please consider these things. I also am offering both myself and any of the players to work with staff on what times might be good for pickleball. And if there's any way we can help with establishing the hours, we'd love to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
No more speakers.
Thank you, Raven. Okay, the first item of business is to review and consider approving the minutes from the December 9th, 2021 special meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 9th, 2021 meeting?
This is Don Cohen. I'll make that motion.
Thank you. I have a second.
This is Peter Struck. I will second.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, please turn on your microphone. There is a motion by Commissioner Cohen and a second by Vice Chair Struck to approve the minutes.
Okay. Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Birkenwald, sorry, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein,
Aye.
All right, so the motion passes and the minutes are approved. The second item of business is the pros plan, and we welcome Meryl Thomas Schott and consultant Steve Dew.
Thanks, everybody. I'm gonna share my screen here, so bear with me. Everybody see that okay? Great, okay. Well, good evening. In Jesse and Jason's absence tonight, I'm gonna attempt to shepherd us through the final review of the final draft of the 2022 pros plan. Tonight, our goals are to approve the final draft of the pros plan, approve the handoff memo to City Council, and review again the next steps in the process. Here's just a quick recap of the engagement for the plan so far. As some of you on the commission may remember, work on the plan actually started in 2019 with a kickoff meeting and a community survey in February of 2022 or 2020. And then, of course, we started things off again in January of 2021. And those dates ever since are listed here. This background will be shared with the City Council in the agenda bill that accompanies the final draft handoff. So without further ado, the commission has received the final draft incorporating revisions coming out of the December commission meeting in hard copy and electronically in your packet. If approved tonight, this is the version that will go to City Council, and then they'll have their chance to review and discuss and provide feedback to the project team. So would you like to have any further discussion on the draft itself? Are you ready to approve? Do you have any questions? This is sort of our first go at it. I'll stop sharing, by the way, while we discuss.
Okay. Commissioner Westberg. You're on mute, Rory.
As I was reading through the draft, I found just a couple in chapter 2, the community profile. I found just a couple of technical corrections that need to be made. I don't know that it's worth spending our time here at the meeting doing that. They don't affect anything other than, you know, it's little data issues or something like that. I'd be happy to put those in an email and send them to you after the meeting so we don't waste our time here tonight doing that.
I think that works. We'll collect anything we see tonight that staff reads as we go through our hard copies as well. And then, you know, once council reviews, we'll have revisions to get to Steve as well. So that'd be great, Rory.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, with all respect to Rory, I guess I'm not keen on approving something that I have no idea what his technical suggestions are. If they take a minute and a half for you to go through, I'd prefer that because, you know, our imprimatur is going on it. So that's one thing. I've only have one other comment. But well, first of all, a compliment to all of you who've worked on it, because it's a great job, and pulling together things from our last meeting in particular to address those, I thought was done quite well. My only suggestion is a small one, and I thought in some way in the acknowledgements, maybe to recognize that Council Member Jacobson is the liaison to the Parks and Rec Commission might make sense. Again, not a big deal, but that's a suggestion.
That's a good one, Don. Thank you. Yeah, we're gonna kind of shop that acknowledgement page around through staff too, to make sure we haven't left anybody off, but that's a good note. Thank you.
Commissioner Westberg.
Well, I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel, but I'll be happy to mention the changes. They really are kind of picky, but are detailed and our background information, nothing having to do with programming, but yeah, I'll be happy to do it.
Sure. Why don't you share that?
Okay, so
I'm happy to pull up the draft too, Rory. Did you say chapter 2?
Yeah.
Okay, give me just 1 second and I will get us there.
And some of this could be, I was reading it late at night and I was seeing things
We've read it a few
that aren't
times.
there. So on page 11, where under the race and ethnicity paragraph.
Okay.
So go back up there and it says where it's talking about the percentages of race on Mercer Island, it says, and 1.4% some other race alone. So there's an extra other in there, I think.
I see it.
And then back on page 9, where there's a table that's showing census data. It shows the median household income for Mercer Island is $147,566. And on page 12, under income and poverty, there's a sentence that said the median household income on Mercer Island was $136,644. So it's a different number.
Okay, we'll check that discrepancy out.
And then further down in that section, let's see, under income and poverty, it's the 4th paragraph that begins at the lower end of the
That
house.
was page 12, Meryl.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was page 12. We're still on page 12.
Thanks.
At the lower end of the household income scale, approximately 8% of Mercer Island households earn less than 25% annually. All that's fine, except all of a sudden we switch from talking about household data to 2.5% of Mercer Island families. And it's not quite clear, is Mercer Island family the 33.1% of households that have children? We switched to a different metric there that I thought could be confusing.
Okay.
And the reason I focused on this, I thought it was a really interesting paragraph and interesting statistics, but so what is a Mercer Island family? Is that a household with children?
If I can jump in on that. So the census defines households and families differently. And I would need to just go back and double check the data sets to validate the content that's in the plan. So without making a forced error verbally, I'd rather just look back at the data set and see how it's defined by census, and then recommend a correction to the content.
Okay, because it may be sufficient simply to keep since we're talking about households throughout much of this, is just to say that keep it the statistic that talks about 8% of households. Or in this paragraph, we switch to families and we talk about families. It just, I thought what was there was a little confusing because it's two different concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. And then on page 15, I think we're into a new chapter.
Yep.
The last bullet under major survey findings, where it talks about programming, respondents indicated a higher interest in seeing more performing arts, educational and boating classes and programs. Is there a modifier missing for programs, or is it just the idea that programs in general?
Oh, here.
Right.
Again, I would look back at the survey summary data just to confirm that, but it might simply be programs in general, but it could be youth programs. I'd want to take a look to just verify.
Okay.
But thanks for calling that out.
Okay. And then let's see. The last one that I had on page 33. And that's the table that's showing parks by type. Let's see. So in this is really weedy, and I apologize for that, but again, open space is an interesting and an important concept in the plan. So this shows the previous, on page 32, under parkland inventory, it says that open space totals under 286 acres across 25 different sites. If you look at the table, it lists 15 sites that are classified as open space, and then it footnotes other parks that contain open space. But, and this is where my vision may have failed me at night, I didn't count 10 more parks with the footnote. I only counted 8, which would give us 23 parks with open space. So either we need a couple more footnotes or we're missing a park or 2.
Thanks for catching that. And again, I'll take a look and coordinate with staff just to make sure that we have it reflected correctly.
Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Rory. We can circle back on those and then send out some correspondence on what we find and how we propose to revise, if that's okay.
Sure.
Great.
Mr. Cohen. Oh, you're on mute.
Don, you're on mute.
In response to Merrill's comment, process-wise, I don't particularly care about seeing these revisions again. I'd like to try to act on this tonight, but and maybe there are going to be some other comments by other people, but if we were just going to ask for a motion right now, I would think it'd be a motion of something to approve it with the revisions that track the ones we've talked about tonight. And I would say that staff can run them by the chair, and that's okay with me, you know, from a delegation point of view. So I don't want to start. I don't think I care about seeing these things in another version and an email that does it, because I got it, and I appreciate Rory's attention to those details.
Yeah, I agree with you, Don. appreciate, Rory, you looking at it so closely. And I think our motion should say that, you know, that we approve it. And on the condition that these particular things will be updated. So perhaps you want to take a stab, Don, unless anybody else has any more questions. Don, can you make a stab at making a motion for us, please?
I'll try that. Yeah, this is Don Cohen. I will move that the commission approve the final draft of the 2022 PROS plan, subject to revisions that reflect the, you know, relatively few comments made tonight that staff and consultants are going to check on, and the chair approving those revisions.
I second.
That was kind of long, sorry. And I'm not addressing the handoff memo in that particular motion.
Correct. That's separate.
Chair McCarthy, if I might jump in, this is Ryan. Could we have Raven read us what she captured on that motion? I would one thing I may recommend is that we add the words recommended document or something along those lines toward to the city council.
Okay. So, and help me to insert those, please, but this is what I have. Cohen moves that the PRC approve the 2022 PROS plan subject to revisions that reflect the few comments shared with staff and consultants, and the chair approved those revisions.
And what was the last part, Ryan?
For recommendation to the city council.
So yeah, Raven, maybe stick in motion to approve final draft of the 2022 PROS plan and recommend.
Or
Send-
recommendation to the city council.
For recommendation to the city council. We
I'll-
got there.
That amendment, this is Don Cohen, that amendment would be, to my motion, would be okay with me.
Great. And Commissioner Westberg, you're okay to second still?
Still okay.
Okay. All right. So
Terrific.
there's a motion. Please turn on your microphones, and will the city conduct a roll call?
Absolutely. Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Birkenwald, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein,
Aye.
All right.
All right, so I'm going to share again for the second portion of our evening.
Great. Thank you.
You still with me on the screen there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So here we've done this. Our second piece of business tonight is to approve the handoff memo to the council for the joint meeting on January 18th. A small group of commissioners developed the memo that's in your packet this evening, along with some input from staff. We can hold discussion on the memo now, and when and if you're ready, we can hear a motion to approve it.
All right. Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, Don Cohen. There was some email traffic with staff on this because I thought that the handoff memo, the last bullet on the last page relating to the bike skills area wasn't very, in my view, wasn't very well defined about what improvements were being discussed. And the way that I had understood this, at least as of the last meeting of the commission, was that people were in favor of safety and environmental rehabilitation work being completed with all deliberate speed, but that actual specific projects related to the use specific use of the area would be pending the completion of the consultant's report, public input on whether it should go ahead and what should go ahead, and then a recommendation by staff. So I took a stab at a revision of that one bullet, and the chair also took a stab at it as well. And I don't, again, I don't know, Jody, how you want to try to cover that.
Yeah, I don't know, Meryl, if you have a copy of that email with that language on it. While we're looking for that, Councilmember Jacobson wants to make a comment.
Well, actually, what I was going to do is wait till this was done, and then my question, once you have a chance to think about it and not answer right now, is the city council does better when in situations where they don't receive cold calls. And as your liaison, I would plan, and I promised the council to give them a little bit of a tee up so that our session a week from Thursday is more productive, and just, people can see what's going on and ask questions and that kind of thing. And my experience is that all's better when you do that. So at some point, when we get done with the letter and all that, I'd like your counsel on if that's what you'd like to have forwarded, or if you want my kinds of things. And at any rate, I think it will be much more productive if we do that. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So Jody, I have your email that kind of has both Dawn's, proposed revisions and your response to that. I'm happy to share that screen.
Yeah, that would be great. And yeah.
Okay.
Dawn, you felt like my revision was okay, except for you wanted to insert. I was thinking, what if we use the word plant instead of environmental rehabilitation?
Jody, this is Commissioner Westberg.
Yeah.
I think I suggest we hear from staff before we try to tackle this language. We hear from staff about where we really are with moving forward with the bike skills area, because I had the impression that staff had a different view of what the commission's role would be going forward and what would actually be taking place.
Yeah, so I don't think you were on this email, Rory, that Dawn and I were on, and this actually says better in my opinion, says better what's actually happening.
No, I probably wasn't on that email.
Yeah.
So I will share that again. And Jody, I think I agree with you. Ryan and I spoke with Lane Summergren, our Deputy Public Works Director, before this meeting, and asked just what you said, Commissioner Westberg. What's the current situation out there? Ryan, do you want to speak a little bit to that, or do you want me to?
I'll let you. It's your show, unless you want me to jump in.
Well, jump in if I speak out of turn.
I'll help you.
Okay, so what we know now, the current situation is the consultant's assessment is complete, and he's now working on the recommendation portions of things. There already has been some work out there, some grading work, some tree removal. And I think maybe where we're getting caught up is there will be some work out at the site based on the recommendations from the consultant this year, for safety, for operational needs, and for keeping environmental safety in mind as well. And so that's sort of on track, and that's the plan. The part that I think staff didn't feel comfortable conveying in the handoff memo was to say that alternative sites or a long-term major planning project for the bike skills area should be on the 2022 work plan for the council and for the commission. So if that helps explain that, This doesn't mean work won't get done, and this doesn't mean that the bike skills area won't be back open to the public, because those things will happen. We are just saying 2022 isn't an ideal year based on the other things we know we have to get done to kick off a long-term planning project for the bike skills area that may include alternative locations. I do think that the language you put together, Jody, reflects that. We can talk about that, but hopefully that gives a little sense of where staff feels we are.
Mhm. Would it be helpful for everybody if I read out what that was so we're all on the same page?
Why don't you put it, why doesn't Meryl put up yours?
Yeah, it just was really little and I couldn't read it. So
Oh,
Okay.
maybe I can do something about that.
if I couldn't read it, then I'm sure that other people might
Yeah,
know.
you can, I mean, I didn't want to say you shouldn't read it.
Yeah, no, totally. Okay, I'm gonna read what possibly we could change it to. Okay, a safety and rehabilitation project is anticipated to occur in the existing footprint of the BMX facility in the Upper Luther Burbank open space in 2022. The commission discussed whether or not this location is optimal for such use. The site has been evaluated by a consultant who determined that it could be developed in this area under specific design guidelines. The commission supports moving forward with further planning and evaluation of improvements to the current bike skills area identified in the consultant's final report and recommended by staff with additional public input. The commission suggests evaluating other locations for a bike skills area in the future. And Dawn suggested after, in front of rehabilitation, environmental rehabilitation. I'm thinking perhaps even plant rehabilitation, because that's something. Commissioner Struck?
Yeah, so a couple of wording suggestions. I think, where is it in, I think it's in the second sentence. Okay, it says existing footprint. I was gonna say then in the beginning of the next sentence, the existing site. Again, kind of, because I think, again, one of the concerns of many in the community is that the site, has been, I'll say, illegally or serendipitously been expanded, and it's important to say that we're shrinking it back to the original site. And the more we can say that, I think can make it clear. I think that's helpful. The other question I have is where we say identified in the consultant's final report recommended by staff with additional public input. Does staff have any suggestions or ideas of what this additional public input will look like? Because I think it'll be helpful to the community to understand what other opportunities will they have to provide that input.
That's a good question. I don't know of any specific public engagement process that will be kicked off at this point. We've got, we just had a second survey that went out. We haven't published the data from that. It closed at the end of December. And we've got a pretty active Let's Talk page engaging with staff and community members. I'm happy to go back and check on that, but this evening I don't know if there is, sort of a full bore public engagement process planned for what recommendations come out of the consultant's report.
Meryl, if I might jump in, this is Ryan. You touched on some key components. I would also add this venue is the forum for these conversations and for the public to share their input as we move forward. I think, as Meryl mentioned earlier, staff, the city as a whole really isn't in a position to go out and do a full-fledged community engagement process around what we're looking at is updates and improvements to an existing area. So I just want to kind of share that level of capacity with the Parks Commission that will continue to be engaging stakeholders and user groups. They all know where to find us as well. So we'll continue to create that engagement, but we won't be going through a full-fledged engagement process at this point.
Okay, thank you. I think that's helpful to really shape people's understandings of what they can expect and what they can't expect. And I guess it related. So nobody outside of staff has seen the final report from the consultant, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's important that at some point that be distributed and the community have a chance to weigh in on that through Let's Talk or whatever.
Yeah.
And then secondly, again, the second survey, again, I think you mentioned the results haven't been tabulated yet. Again, I think it'd be valuable to see what those are, and then again, how these survey results will kind of inform the project. So I think there's some more steps that need to be done. I understand that the kind of the more robust public engagement process that maybe some would like, is not going to happen. But I think the more opportunity we give interested parties the opportunity to kind of comment, I think the easier it is going to be down the road. My final comment. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Chair McCarthy, if I could, sorry to jump in line again. Commissioner Struck, excellent points. Thank you. I did also want to remind, and I forgot to mention this in my previous statement, this project is not funded. So there is a need for funding if these improvements are going to move forward. That's also going to require the city council to take some level of action to appropriate those funds. So there will be a variety of public engagement as we go forward as well. So thank you.
All right, Commissioner Cohen.
A couple of points.
Yes.
Don Cohen. Instead of the word environmental before rehabilitation, in light of the chair's comment, I think it's probably not just plants. It's soil and plant rehabilitation, or soil and vegetation rehabilitation, I think. And so that would be okay if you don't want to use environmental. I agree with Commissioner Struck's comments on other things. And no offense, but some people keep mentioning the survey. If you looked at the survey is all about, do you want this thing to go up with double humps, or do you want a single hump? Do you want wooden structures later on and stuff like that? So the people who are opposed, or who aren't bike riders, really haven't had the kind of opportunity that they should. So I support what Commissioner Struck said about being deliberate on giving them that opportunity. And I was, in last comment, I was only a little concerned when Merrill said that there are some environmental things, there are some safety things, and there are some operational things that are going to be done. I didn't know what that meant, and that started me my concern hat. So I don't know. I don't want that to be something that we don't understand is going to be going on.
Sure. Yeah. And my understanding is really just mapping out on the staff side, what comes next, how we do volunteer projects out there, how equipment is stored out there, a little bit more of the how we do things and not so much change on the operations at the site.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Would the terminology site restoration and rehabilitation cover the waterfront as terms of plants and environmental and these kinds, and soils and all that?
What do you think, Don? Do you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, this is Don Cohen. Yeah, I think so. If it works for Commissioner Struck with the use of the term site, because he had mentioned that earlier, but that would work for me.
Well then.
Would you put up where we are then, language-wise? I've kind of lost the thread of the changes and would like to see the final before a motion is presented.
Yes.
Let me pull that back up then. Sorry about that. A safety and site rehabilitation project is anticipated to occur in the existing footprint of the BMX facility in the Upper Luther Burbank. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna stop us there. We're moving away from BMX facility and we're gonna go with bike skills area. Is
Well,
everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah, but the reason why we had it because it used to be called the BMX. That's why it's in the existing footprint of the BMX facility.
Okay.
But we still consider it to be the bike skills and we get that part, but does that make sense? That it was the BMX and now it's in that existing site?
Just put bike skills area in parentheses behind it
Yeah,
and you got it covered.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you, Commissioner Westbrook. So a safety and site rehabilitation project is anticipated to occur in the existing footprint of the BMX facility, bike skills area, in the Upper Luther Burbank open space in 2022. The commission discussed whether or not this location is optimal for such use. The site has been evaluated by a consultant who determined that it could be developed in this area under specific design guidelines. The commission supports moving forward with further planning and evaluation of improvements to the current bike skills area identified in the consultant's final report and recommended by staff with additional public input. The commission suggests evaluating other locations for a bike skills area in the future.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yeah, Don Cohen. The only comment is I think that Council Member Jacobson had said site restoration rather than rehabilitation. I don't care about the difference of that terminology, but I think he said restoration.
Yeah, I'm okay with restoration.
Restoration.
I would use both
Yeah,
because I think they're two different functions here. And I think that if we add restoration in there, that speaks to the people, the Luther Burbank people who are very concerned that take place. And I think we're saying we hear you on that one.
Okay, so it'd be a safety, restoration, site restoration and rehabilitation project. Does that
Yeah.
make sense, Meryl?
Yep, I got it.
Okay,
Okay. So then I believe if you are ready, we could come up with a motion
okay. Sorry.
based on those revisions when you're ready.
Yeah, sorry, Meryl. Could you just share your screen one more time with that on it so everybody could read it so that different learners can absorb that information?
Sure. I haven't typed it in, but I'll show
Okay.
you where it is that we'll add.
Okay.
Meryl, oh, sorry, I do have it on my screen. I can share it for you.
Oh, you typed it up? Okay.
I'm a fast typer too.
Good for you, Ryan.
Commissioner Struck,
Let me show it to you and track changes.
thank you.
Thank you, Peter Struck. So as I kind of looked at this a little bit more, so the second sentence where it says the commission discussed whether or not this location is optimal for such use, period. It kind of leaves a reader hanging. Well, what did the commission really think? Because then in the last sentence, we say we should evaluate other locations. I don't know what other commissioners think, but what was the conclusion of our discussion? I mean, is it something where we said we didn't come to any conclusion? We just discussed it? I mean,
Yeah, we did just discuss it. I don't think that we came up with anything. I don't think that there was a decision made or about it. So, I mean, the important thing to me is that we did discuss it and we have been discussing it for people to know that we have thought about it a lot.
My understanding from what I know of those discussions was, yes, it was important to convey to the council that the commission discussed other locations, would be interested in looking at other locations. But that sort of would be a part of that longer term planning process when that's on the work plan.
What if we said the commission has discussed and will continue to consider whether? And so that leaves open, that it's not an open and shut kind of thing. It's not something we're blowing off. Because I'm quite sure that the council will come back and say, based on the data, guys, what do you recommend? Which would be the.
Yeah, I think that's great, Jake.
This is Commissioner Struck. I concur. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, Commissioner Westberg. Oh, you're on mute.
So we do say in the last sentence that we suggest evaluating other locations for a bike skills area in the future. So that, to me, says we haven't dropped the topic.
Mhm.
We want it to stay alive. We're just not, we just have not at this point reached any consensus about how to move forward with that issue, and particularly not in 2022.
Mhm.
But we want to keep it alive. So that's, to me, that's what that last sentence is.
Mhm.
This is Commissioner Struck, just to kind of, I mean, I agree with you, Roy. It's just really awkward, that second sentence where it says it was discussed, and there's kind of, and then you have to kind of read down and then piece back. Oh, okay, that's kind of this
Yeah.
last sentence is somewhat a follow on of the discussion.
Yeah.
And I think that Council Members Jacobson's suggested wording, I think, just helps that sentence stand alone and be a more
Mhm.
complete thought.
Yeah. No, it's kind of a part of a sentence for sure.
Ryan, can you add that in? Commission discussed and will continue to consider whether or not this location,
Right here, the commission discussed.
Yeah, comma or something.
and will continue to consider, I believe.
Mhm.
If one does that, I'm not sure you need the last sentence.
I agree.
Yeah. Commissioner Peter?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Mhm. Don?
This is Don Cohen. I wasn't on the subcommittee, but because I thought the same thing initially, but then I thought that this last sentence is a little stronger than just saying that the commission discussed and will continue to consider whether or not this location. Because in addition to that, we suggest evaluating other locations.
Mhm.
So I don't think I favor deleting that final sentence. I don't know whether you move that second sentence down to right before that other one or not, but I sort of like the strength of the final sentence to remain.
I think moving it down would, if we leave the last sentence, we should move the prior
And
sentence.
the other one down and have
So
those two together
the
at
thought
the
is
end.
continuous.
Does that make sense?
So taking this sentence
Yeah.
highlighted here, moving
Yeah.
it before the
Yeah.
final sentence.
Yeah.
And this is Commissioner Stuck. I would even, I don't know how this goes from a formatting standpoint, but I'd almost put those last two sentences as kind of a new separate paragraph to kind of accent it a little bit, as opposed to just a kind of a tag on to the
Mhm.
other piece.
Marie, you have a comment?
Yeah, I know I'm speaking out of turn and on something that's not my role here, but I have listened to all the conversations, and particularly with people from Luther Burbank. And I guess my outsider's kind of reaction is using the words developed in this area and evaluation of improvements is subject to interpretation that we're thinking about expanding the bike area rather than return it to its original size. And I just throw that out as just a thought.
Okay.
Jody, Don Cohen, can I
Yes.
comment on that?
Yes.
I did exactly what you did, Marie. I sort of put myself into Sue Stewart and some of the other people's mind, and that's why this was drafted. Okay, we'll move forward with planning and evaluation, based on the specific things that the consultant comes up with and that are recommended by staff with additional public input. So I agree with you, but I was trying to maintain as much of the language that the subcommittee had drafted as possible, but still try to convey that the specific improvements aren't, putting aside the funding issue, the specific improvements aren't being recommended at this point. They're just saying, okay, we'll take a look at them when we know what the recommendations are. We'll take a look at them after public input and evaluate the story on them. You know, and then of course, adding in the final 2 sentences about whether this is the right place or not.
Mhm. Commissioner Jacobson, or sorry, Councilmember Jacobson.
Call me anything you want. That's fine with that. What if we changed, instead of developed, said restored? And that tells us 2 things. A, we're going to go back to more or less the way it was. Or it will exist in the current footprint. And that ties in with the idea that we're going to, restore the site, but it would limit somewhat. The developed thing is some may regard that as being, oh, well, here we go again. This thing's going to expand. So.
Mhm. Yeah, that could be a good word. Commissioner Westberg.
I was going to suggest we use the word accommodated. The site has been evaluated by a consultant who determined that it could be accommodated in this area under specific design guidelines.
Oh, I like the word accommodated.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Because we've used restoration up above in sort of a separate context, or we've already emphasized this site restoration.
Mhm. Commissioner Markson.
Okay, so I'm like, maybe I forgot something that I was involved in a conversation of, so apologies. But I'm reading this section and I actually can't tell what is really happening, like what we're really saying. I think what it's saying now, so I'm just going to check that this is what you want it to say. It sounds like we're saying we're restoring the existing area, like back to how it was. And that we're gonna start the planning process and it could be development of the same area, like a new design, but the same area. But we may also consider moving it, and the commission actually thinks we should move it. Like that's kind of how it reads. So it just.
Yeah, that's good to
kind of
have fresh eyes on it. We're not thinking that it should be moved, but we're thinking that it definitely, maybe look at some other areas, or like make another bike skills area that's different skills, because you could do a pump track, for example, which is totally different than the area that it is right now. And pump track has different things on it. So thank you for.
So we're definitely, and I apologize if I've forgotten this, but we decided that we were we're rehabilitating that one. I'm fine with that. I do remember that, but I don't remember saying that we were gonna further plan and evaluate improvements to the current area.
So right now, so the consultant looked at the site to see if it would be good, like if they could do anything in there to make it more, because right now it's a BMX before, different now from the mountain biking. And he's determined that we could safely put something there. So that's what's happened. But there's that's an in the future thing. Right now, what they're going to do is they're just going to rehabilitate the site and put back some plants and take out some trees to make it safer, so they can open it back up again. So that's because right now it's closed. So they can't bike there at all.
Okay.
What else?
No, I guess it is saying what you're describing. It just, maybe I don't know, it sounds, it just seems like it could be simpler. Like basically, it seems like we're saying, we're going to undertake a further discussion on what we're going to do with the bike skills in general. And it may be that it's there, and it may be that it's there and it looks different, and it may be that it's in a new spot. Yeah, I don't know. It's
No,
it's kind of
hit the
like
nail on
so
the
many
head
words.
there. That's exactly what's going to happen. That's what this is supposed to say. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, it sounds more confusing. It reads more confusing than maybe it should be, but
Yeah,
that's just.
yeah. Commissioner Westberg.
It's the perfect paragraph drafted by a committee.
Well, as long as this, I have another suggestion. That is that the second sentence be the first sentence. And then it, because it's been evaluated, and then and then I think that the third sentence should be the second sentence, and the first sentence should be the fourth sentence of the first paragraph, because I think that follows in logical sequence. Now that I'm stuck my nose into this thing.
Commissioner Struck.
Yeah, my suggestion is in the last line of the first paragraph where we say with additional public input there. Listening to Commissioner Cohen and a couple others, I think we should strengthen that a little bit and say subject to additional public input. So it puts a little bit higher bar that we really do want to have public input on the consultant's final report and whatever staff recommendations are.
Okay, so instead of with, you want subject to.
Right, yeah.
The thing that I have about subject to is like, that's not necessarily the case. Like, so what's a different way of saying subject to?
Subject to feels like a requirement.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do want to, this is the commission's document that they're handing off, but I do want to reinforce my previous comments about where staff is with an additional public process or anything like that for an existing area. That's just not something that I think the city manager would support putting on the work plan.
I agree. I think tying us to public input on what happens with the consultant's recommendations is tricky. I do think public input will be taken and considered, and certainly a large public engagement process to any major project out there. I just don't know that I agree with Ryan. I'm not sure we should tie ourselves to subject to.
Yeah, with all due respect, this is Commissioner Struck to the staff. I think that, again, we're not expressing or saying in this public, we're not defining public input as a major public engagement process like you're referring to. It's just saying that, putting a little bit higher bar of just saying, no, we need to make a, I think Chair McCarthy used the term requirement, or somebody did. I mean, yeah, we're requiring that we want additional public input. We don't get it, well, that's just something too, but it puts it out there. That's my point.
How about in consideration of? Or something like that.
With consideration of.
Yeah.
I like that better than with. I prefer subject to better, but I'll defer to others.
Yeah, in consideration to additional. Try that. Commissioner Westberg.
I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. Okay, so going back to Jake's comment about changing the order of things.
Sorry, this is Ryan again, and I do want to pull us maybe back a bit from the amount of wordsmithing we're doing here. I do want it to come across very well. We're starting to make some what I may consider more minor changes to the document that aren't substantive, and so just something I wanted to bring to the chair as we move forward. But I do.
Yeah, thank you. I don't.
recognize this
Yeah.
process, but also I also wanted to put in a little plug for what Council Member Jacobson was saying earlier on the way we have the conversation with the City Council on January 18th. That's where we really get to explain and have the conversation with the council what's being put forward and maybe clarify the commission's feelings.
Well, if I could respond to that, I think one of the questions that my colleagues are going to say is, well, what have you done so far? We've had a survey. What, you know, what's the conclusion that you have? The conclusion is we can accommodate. Okay. Then what do you plan? What are you recommending, or what further action is there? We want to study. This requires more work, and excuse me, and you know, we're going to do that in consideration of public input, and I think it flows in a logical sequence. I know at least one city councilman's going to say, well, you say you're going to improve it, but you don't even have the survey. So how can you decide what you're going to anticipate a project until you know what your consultant's going to say? So I think, excuse me, there's an order of precedence here. I think it would be helpful to not having this discussion turn into being much longer than it needs to be at the city council level.
Commissioner Cohen.
Council member, can you say again your recommendation for reorganization? And I think our dilemma is and I think I might have drafted this, further planning and evaluation of improvements, right? That's the hang up here, what that means. But anyway, what was your, again, you started out with the first sentence pretty much stays the way it is, right?
But it's in a different order. Second sentence becomes the first sentence.
Is that right here? Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, wait, before you do that, isn't the first sentence kind of a standalone thing? That's underway, you know, but anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, you know, nothing's going to happen until the city council approves some funding. So we're anticipating something that the city council has to approve later, but I think the city council, maybe I'm being picayune about this, but that presumably the project is going to proceed on the basis of what the consultant recommends and the staff has with the staff. And so I think it's important that the second sentence be the first sentence. And then the third sentence be the second sentence. And the last thing is that we anticipate that this would occur in 2022. That's the punchline.
I know. Well, the thing is that all of those other things are not going to happen in 2022. Only the first sentence is going to happen in 2022, which is just the safety and site restoration and rehabilitation project. Like any other extra stuff is going to be for later.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
But what's going to be done in 22, as far as I understand, is going to be whatever we do is going to be shaped for safety considerations by what the consultant determines and recommends.
Got it.
And so that because that, as I see this, and maybe I'm making too much out of a small thing here, but we're not spending money on a consultant just to, you know, have it not.
You went on mute. You're on mute, Jake. You're still on mute.
Doesn't look like he's muted, but we sure can't hear him.
Weird.
We want to look forward to it.
Yeah, you were on mute that whole time. Were you pressing on the space bar maybe?
No, I'm standing back from my computer. I don't dare touch.
We hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah, hear you now. Say it again.
Sentence number 2 should be sentence number 1. Have 1 be 2, and then just go with 3. That's
okay. So you just want, so, okay, so Ryan, could you please do that? And thank you so much. Move sentence 2 to number 1.
There we go. And then we've got, is that the right order now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and then, and this is totally nitpicky, but it should be a safety and then take out that and then put a comma where that and is, right?
A safety, comma, and
Yeah.
site.
Then take out the and then safety, site restoration
I
and
think
rehabilitation.
the and, this Don Cohen, I think the and stays.
Yeah,
Okay,
Um,
sorry. There's too many reds now.
Yeah, I mean, and now with the change of order, which may be fine, the first sentence leads with "in this area," which isn't defined. So we're talking about the existing footprint of the BMX facility, paren bike skills area, right?
Right.
Mhm.
You could also shift those bike skills area FKA BMX facility. Because it isn't a BMX facility anymore. From
I know.
I lost you guys for a second.
Well, you could say in the footprint of the bike skills area, FKA, formerly known as the BMX facility.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so in the first sentence, well,
So
Maybe for the first sentence, the existing footprint of the bike skills area, formerly known as the BMX facility, has been evaluated.
exactly.
instead of the site,
Yeah,
so the existing,
Footprint,
say that again.
the existing footprint of the bike skills area, formerly known as
Yeah,
the BMX facility, has been evaluated. Yep.
Existing is mistyped.
oh, there we go.
No, see, there you go.
And then
yeah, so then,
probably
yeah,
a safety and site and restoration, safety site restoration and rehabilitation project is anticipated to occur
in the site or,
in this, at this site,
yeah,
at the site.
site.
To occur at this site.
Yeah, in,
Yeah, that's good.
mhm. All
There's,
right.
there's a couple of words on here that aren't read yet.
We can do this.
Are you inviting me to do something, Brian?
All right. Okay. Are we all in agreement on this paragraph now and on the rest of our memo, which is, I don't know, I'm biased. I think that it's pretty great. All right, Commissioner Westberg.
I move that we forward the hands-off memo as drafted with the proposed revisions to the paragraph relating to the bike skills area improvements to the city council.
We have a second? Commissioner Burstein.
I second it.
All right. We have a motion. Can everybody turn on their microphones? And will the city staff please conduct a roll call vote?
Okay. Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Birkenwald, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein,
Aye.
All right, that's great. get us getting through that. Thank you for your patience on that, everybody. Okay.
Okay, I have one more, I think one more slide to share. So
Okay.
we'll do that. Next steps, and then we will call it. Let me make sure that I have the right screens up. Okay, just a review of our final steps for the PROS plan. Here are the key dates. This week we'll submit the final draft for SEPA review with the city's planning department. And that triggers a 30-day public comment period. Steve has much more experience with this than me, so he's going to speak a little bit about what a SEPA review is, and then you'll see the rest of our kind of important dates below. So Steve, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Meryl. So for those who might not be deeply entrenched in the planning and review of documents from the city, the SEPA is the State Environmental Policy Act, and it is a state mandated review and public disclosure process, basically, that is required for all regulated projects as well as planned documents that are put together by a city. So we are required to do a SEPA checklist, and what it is a set of questions that's provided by the state that the project team responds to with regard to the plan. And then that gets circulated to the public for public review along with the plan document. And again, as Meryl noted, there's a 30-day window for people to provide feedback and comment. At the close of that 30-day window, comments are reviewed, and if comments are deemed generally acceptable or doesn't really trigger a significant impact on the plan, then the city would publish a determination that the SEPA has been processed and it's generally not significant. One thing to note about the SEPA process is that SEPA is attributed to two different kinds of projects. One is a project with a, let's say, capital P. One is that's such as a construction or a new development or water work or things that impact the earth or the air. The other is what they call a non-project, and a system plan like this is a non-project. So the types of questions are a little bit different between a non-project SEPA and a project SEPA. But what it really means is that this plan will go through a non-project SEPA review, and any subsequent action that happens as a result of the plan, for example, improvements at Luther Burbank or Clark Beach or any of the other physical projects that the city might move forward on in the next several years, will trigger a project SEPA. So review at the plan level does not eliminate the need to do a SEPA process for specific projects going forward. Hopefully that helps and it doesn't confuse people too much, but it is a step we have to go through, and generally it's a fairly straightforward process, and hopefully we have modest comment on it. I'll turn it back to Meryl.
Thanks, Steve. All I have are these remaining dates. We have our upcoming meeting, January 18th. The City Council will also hold a review and discussion on February 15th. And the hope is that in March, the City Council will endorse the PROS plan. That's all I have. I'm going to stop share for any other discussion.
Sorry, Commissioner Struck.
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. Steve, so on the SEPA review, what is the expected timing of that?
So the SEPA has been pushed out by the city as of, I think it was yesterday, right, Meryl, or 2 days ago. So the 30-day window has started, and that would close, I'm looking at a calendar, the first week of February. So the intent is that the SEPA process is closed and finalized prior to City Council action on the plan.
Thank you.
One thing I would suggest is what Steve had to say going through that schedule would be a very good thing to tee up the presentation, because it gives the city council the understanding of what the urgencies are. And I think the fact that the SEPA period has already started speaks well of both the staff and consultants and the commission. And I think that'd be very positive for the public that's watching the show. So.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right. We're going to move on to the third item of business, which is the Special Events Policy Considerations, Part 1. And we welcome Katie Herzog, Recreational Coordinator, Special Events and Community Partnerships, and Consultant Emily Moon.
Hello. Good to see all of you again. I'm going to get right into it. Before I do, I just want to mention this is our introduction to this potential policy, and we anticipate you may have additional comments or questions that we could return to discuss with you at a future meeting. Ultimately, our goal is to try to get a policy in front of City Council sometime this spring before City Council gets busy with the biennial budget contemplation, so that we can begin to communicate policy. And if there are any implications for the budget, we can incorporate that into the budget proposals. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. All right. So tonight we're going to talk very briefly because you had a lot of information in your packet. So I'm not going to rehash everything that was in your packet, but give you a tiny bit of background on the current approach to special events in the city. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about one particular policy question. So just so that we're all on the same page, the city deals with a bunch of different types of special events. There are special events the city puts on itself that are budget line items where staff resources are used. There are also special events that happen in the community that are purely private special events. We're not talking about those today. Think, a wedding in the park. There are also other open to the public special events that are put on by individuals in the community or groups in the community. And those are among the events that we'll be talking about today. So we're focused on publicly attended special events in the community and those events that are occurring on public property, either in whole or in part, or publicly attended events that would impact public property or rights of way. And the city plays a few different roles. One of those that we'll talk quite a bit about tonight is as the permitting agency for those special events. So I included an attachment in your packet that was a quick SWOT analysis laying out strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as the staff kinds of sees those issues, so that you would have a little bit of an understanding of what things we're dealing with and where we might have some opportunities to make some changes to improve our practices and our policies. Ultimately, where we're hoping to get by having some input from you on a policy and then getting City Council's comment and buy-in and approval is to make sure that the city is still providing special event opportunities to community members and that those are safe, well facilitated, available to all. I wrote a little bit about hopefully ensuring the diversity of options, a lot of different interests in the community. And I think the richness of special events lends itself to the quality of life in a community. But we also want to move forward with improving how clear and consistent we are about the level of support that the city will give to special events, particularly those events that aren't funded by the city, they're not designed by the city, they're not staffed by the city. There's been inconsistency on that point over the years. And then that kind of leads to this third point of wanting to improve the certainty about the appropriateness of providing support that is related to tax dollars. So sometimes that's a true expenditure, and then sometimes it's soft costs. It's the amount of time that staff is spending in support of carrying out those special events. And all of you have heard this phrase about the gift of public funds. It's really important for the municipality to document, have plans for how public funds are expended. And so that's one of the reasons why we want to try to get some better clarity on this particular point, because we can do better on that front. So these are the two policy questions that I posed in your memo. The first is the one that we're going to focus on tonight. The second kind of is, I'd say, a byproduct of answering the first. So the first is it acceptable for the city to assist any individual or group in planning and delivering an event beyond processing and issuing a permit, which are standard city services, and beyond providing fee compensated services? And I want to define that last part for you. So the city typically will take in an application for a special event, do the work it needs to do to vet that application and permit it responsibly. As the event occurs, some events require additional city services on the day of the event. And typically the city has invoiced the event organizer for those types of services. So a good example of this is if you're running a road race and you need traffic control at a particular busy intersection that the police department is going to provide, then you'll be invoiced for the police officer's time. So here are, I think, the potential answers to those questions and the options that flow from them. So if it's not acceptable for the city to give city resources to these events that are non-city events, then what would probably happen at that point is the city would only expend for the city-run, city-designed special events. So think summer celebration and things like that. All other events that would happen in the city, those event organizers and groups would be charged full fees to recover any of the city's costs in evaluating the application, approving the permit, and then providing any necessary services to that special event. However, the flip side is if you say it might be okay for us to support these community groups or individuals or the diversity of special events in our community, and therefore we think it's okay for the city to support some way, shape, form, we'll get to that later, special events in the community, then the big question is which of those non-city events should receive some of those resources. And I made this point in the memo. There aren't many cities who across the board fund every special event that is happening in a community. It's by far more common, the most common, for cities to somehow kind of pick and choose what kinds of special events or which partners it's going to support in their delivery of special events. So I've talked through this a little bit. This is in your packet too. I tried to lay out some of the benefits and the drawbacks of answering that first question, either in the affirmative or the negative. If you felt that it was not acceptable to give non-city entities any additional support that's not compensated through the fees, then the city would simply just budget for its own special events, and all others would have to pay their own way. Again, one of the biggest drawbacks to this, I think, is it limits the city's ability to be in partnership with community members, with organizations that are providing for that richness of a quality of life and experience in Mercer Island. If you said it was acceptable to somehow support in a more tangible way those organizations and events, then there are a lot of different ways that we could handle this. And again, tonight we won't, if we have time, we'll maybe touch on some of those options, but we won't spend a lot of time on it. Our primary goal tonight is to really just get some discussion around this first question of whether you felt it might be acceptable to draft a policy that lays out some parameters for supporting non-city special events. So I'm going to pause here before we kind of talk about potentially some of those options and just get your general feedback. How are you feeling about where the city might land on this policy question? Do you feel it is acceptable, and should we start to craft a policy around the city's level of support and contribution toward non-city special events? So Chair McCarthy, I'll just turn it over to you and we'll try to facilitate that conversation.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Westberg.
This is Commissioner Westberg. Hi, Emily. I have a question about when you use the word acceptable. Are you talking in terms of the cost recovery pyramid that was developed? So it would be acceptable under that philosophy, under the pyramid, or are you talking just a matter of acceptable practice or common practice?
Yes, great question. I'm talking about the latter. What would be an ideal practice for the city? I think we can have some discussion after we answer that about the level of support and how it fits in with the pyramid, the cost recovery pyramid, as you mentioned.
Okay, thanks for that.
Perfect. Commissioner Burstein.
This is Paul Burstein. Are there real world examples that you're aware of what acceptable events have been done, either Mercer Island or any of our neighboring cities? And what are some examples of uncompensated resources?
Sure. Commissioner, let me answer that last part first. I think we're going to get to the first part in just a second. I can show some examples of how other cities have handled this. The non-compensated kinds of services are typically those services that are occurring during the permitting phase. So the city has had a very small application fee. That application fee in the past was $25, for example. That $25 did not fully compensate the city for the amount of staff time that went into processing those applications. So what's involved in processing applications might be on one end when it's a very simple event with limited impact to the general public or public rights of way or city facilities, is that one member in the recreation division would be able to review that application and say, looks good, nothing challenging here, and it would get permitted. On the flip side, though, there are larger events. Let's take the example of a fun run, where multiple departments have to review that application, police department, fire department, maybe community planning, maybe communications group in terms of notification to the community. And that involves more staff time. And so that $25 didn't go very far. We're hoping to design both a policy and a practice that takes those costs into consideration and then charges appropriate fees for wherever we land in terms of the policy and the intent on cost recovery for permitting. So the second part of your question was about other examples. And we're going to talk about this if we have more time in a little bit, but I'll tell you the kinds of events that the city has permitted in the past have been small events that a particular individual just wanted to advertise an event for the whole community. They may have set up some sort of little fair in a park, all the way to major events that are broadcast to the entire community and involve transportation issues and maybe food trucks and far more complexity. So Mercer Island has a full range of special events that it typically is evaluating in a normal year. In other cities, cities have decided to do varying things. They have decided to enter into agreements ahead of a fiscal year and have entered into contracts with different community organizations to help them to carry out their events or to underwrite them to some degree. In other places, communities have shaped up a sort of grant program where they ask for requests for proposals and they list out objectives for the community special events. Like this year, the city council is very focused on our strategic plan goals of celebrating our cultural diversity. And we're looking to help fund community groups who are going to provide public special events that are focused on celebrating that diversity in our community. That's an example. So there are a lot of different ways that municipalities can choose to set some parameters around how many groups, which groups, what kind of events, what are the outcomes that they're looking for from those events, or to minimize kind of impact to the community. I've seen some communities that are more tourist attractions limit the number of large special events that the community will permit in a given year just because of the impact to the year-round residents. So hopefully that answered your question or gave you enough to get started on this conversation.
Sure did. Thank you.
Great.
All right, Vice Chair Stark.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Thank you, Peter Stark. So just to kind of level set, I'm looking here at an email that I think was sent out by one of the staffers. I'm trying to think who it was, but the comment was that it says annually we receive approximately 15 public special event requests. Of those, approximately 7 come to fruition and are permitted each year. And then they gave, there's several examples given, and I'm looking at many of them, and they're what I would consider to be primarily on-island and off-island fundraisers. MI Rotary Run is a good example of, they attract a good portion of MI residents, but there's a lot of people that come off island to do that run and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I guess I want to make sure we're level set here. I know, Emily, you just talked about all these different events and possibilities, but the data I think suggests that it's a pretty small number, and just wanted to make sure that I'm operating with the right data.
Yes, I believe you are, and I'll let Katie speak to that in just a sec. I will share that the data isn't always super complete, and sometimes the city has expended time talking with events that organizers who don't end up bringing their events forward, but may even submit applications. I will also say time is spent on events that never applied for nor were granted permits. Again, we're trying to create some more consistency going forward. And I think, Vice Chair, I think you're right that a lot of these special events double as opportunities for the event organizers to raise some funds. In many of those cases, they they use those funds then to deliver other programs or services to the community. And that's why I think it is important for us to kind of wrestle with this question of how might we want to support that? What's the appropriate level of support? How do we ensure equity and fairness in this practice and policy? But it's not a huge number, but each of those events takes staff time and some amount of whether they're hard costs or soft costs are being expended on them. And it's not necessarily the magnitude of the dollar value. This is an effort to try to create a better practice.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess, maybe I'll just throw it out kind of where I'm leaning at the moment. I'll stress the word leaning because I know we're going to talk about this at, I guess, another meeting, but I think I would go with kind of probably the not acceptable. In other words, just say, here is the fees that we need for these things. And I suspect many of the organizations that fundraise would just, Rotary Run, they might, raise their entrance fee $1 or 50 cents type of thing. I don't know what the numbers are. And the reason I say that is, one, the numbers are very small. If it was 50 or 100, I think then I would probably have a different discussion. But when it's probably, less than 20 and less than 10, perhaps it actually get permitted. I view that we should keep things as simple as possible. And, and I think one of the weaknesses are, the first one was staff resources are limited. And the community hears that all the time, that we're short on staff and so forth. So when we create a more elaborate, complex processes, by its very nature, it just takes a lot more staff time, which seems to be at a premium these days. So I would just keep it simple. I think to the issue of equity or whatever, you could have a separate application process for I'll call it subsidy. I'm not, for something like that to help out. I think we already have that at the community center, so that's not a new practice. But it just keeps it simple, and I guess that's kind of where I'm kind of landing at this point, subject to other commentary. Thank you.
Great. I appreciate those comments. Just for the good of the discussion, I'll add, while there are larger groups that run special events as fundraisers and are taking some sort of admission fee or registration fee and therefore are generating some revenue, there are also community members and partners and organizations that are running events as part of their mission and in service to community members, and those are not, there's no attendance or entrance fee that is required for that. So think about a nonprofit that serves preschoolers, for example, or an arts related nonprofit who, as part of their mission, wants to deliver some education or performance art. And yes, maybe they also raise awareness of their services and their entity in doing so, but they're not raising revenue. So I just want to make sure that you have the full gamut in your mind as we're discussing this. And then to Vice Chair Struck's comment that some sort of scholarship might be possible for those types of groups. That's indeed what we're talking to you all about right now. Do you want to differentiate between groups and allow some of those to receive scholarships? Right now, the scholarship program is not applied to producing special events. It could be applied to those who want to attend a city special event that might require some sort of fee. Thank you, Chair.
And Katie Herzog, I was just going to add that 3 of the examples that were emailed out were exactly what Emily was just talking about. One was a parade put on by the high school. One was a community group who just wanted to have a community picnic in a park and invite anyone and everyone to join. And a third was a holiday celebration. So 3 examples that have happened pretty annually on the island that are not charging any admission or not fundraising for anything, but just putting on those events for the community.
Thank you. Commissioner Markson.
Yeah, thanks. It was funny because I was listening to Commissioner Struck and I thought I had kind of the exact opposite conclusion when he was talking about the numbers of applications. I thought, well, given, I don't know, the one thing that I love about the community is a little bit of a small town feel. It seems like that's changing a little bit since longer I've lived here, and I think being friendly to allowing community activities like that to happen. And yes, maybe some other people will take more city resource time than is desirable. And maybe there's a way to kind of find a balance for those things. But I guess I'd hate to make it seem so, I don't know what the word is, strict, that everything has to be reimbursed and, you don't. I don't know, it just makes it maybe less friendly to community members who would want to do something like you're talking about. That was my first thought. And then, but it is a good point that you don't, that's more complicated because then you have to have some sort of like a way to define that flexibility or manage it and budget for it. And I don't know, I'm sure that's something that we could figure out, but I don't know. I definitely fall in the favor of providing some city resource support without everything having to be reimbursable. Now, when I first read the materials, I have to say I thought I was not picturing the permit part, which I'm sure can take time. I was picturing more protecting city property and people's safety, which I do think, I assume there's a standard cost recoupment strategy for ensuring that property is not negatively impacted. And that, so I guess maybe I'm not sure everything that falls under that, like a recouping all costs idea, but in general, I'd support some, support for like the city just budgeting a certain amount that is not for a specific, it's just generally there to provide support to the community that may want to do an event. But there's a limit on it. I guess maybe that's the easiest way for me to say it.
Yeah, and I'll say there's certainly some, time spent that varies once the permit is given and people are going and actually coordinating and trying to implement their event. So there is that, yes, you have the green light, but there can be a lot of back and forth with groups. Maybe if it's the first time they've ran something or they're adding some sort of element to the event that then creates more questions or maybe more elements that they need to provide us as far as they've never done a site plan before, maybe they've never done a parking plan before. So the permitting part definitely, but I do just want to note that there is time and back and forth with the groups, like as they are planning their event or trying to make it come to fruition.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can understand now that you're saying it, I could understand how that time could really be more than you would maybe expect, especially if the less sophisticated a group is, the more time they're probably going to take to plan that event. And I guess even then, again, when I consider, I guess I'm not hearing that we've had maybe lots of problems with it, but given that the number may be smallish, I'd prefer to err on the side of trying to help those types of people than like cut them off before we even get there. That's all I'm thinking. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, thank you, Don Cohen. I started, let's assume that this is a quote, good thing. okay, because of the culture and what it adds to the community. Let's sort of assume that for a minute. The application and permitting fee, and I would leave this to staff, but that's way too low. Okay, so that, and I assume that staff will be, with Emily's help, will be looking at that. When I had my check-in call with Emily and Ryan, we talked a little bit about the dollars in time, et cetera, that were actually spent on these kinds of activities, acknowledging that the records are not very exact. And I was just sort of asking for some ballpark kind of things. And they said, well, it could range from really low up to, let's say, I said, what is it? Is it $10,000? Is it $1,000? Is it $2,000? And I think, and I know they'll correct me, I think they said, well, $2,000 worth of time, et cetera, would be at the high end. So then I'm sort of thinking, if you were looking at the last year, 10 events, $2,000, and raise the application fee, the city council may well say, you know what, that's well worth spending. Okay, but or maybe setting a maximum for any one event, above which you have to do it on a fee kind of basis, and you'd have a contract. I think we just don't know. We don't know what the future is going to bring when there isn't a pandemic. So whatever was implemented, maybe ought to be a 2-year pilot program or something until you see whether thousands of organizations come out of the woodwork because they see a bunch of free money. I'm saying this like I'm disparaging the groups, which I don't really mean to do. But I think, because I think it's sort of like, if it's a really good thing, and this is going to what Sarah was saying, if it's a really good thing, the council may decide, okay, that's worth budgeting for, and put a maximum amount, and let the staff make some recommendations on how that, whether there ought to be some maximums before you go to fee-based other than raising the application fee. How you distinguish which ones, that to me, I need to see recommendations from staff and Emily on that one, because I get the problem with that. That the first come, first serve model always ticks off somebody, and is at least subject to criticism, no matter what you do. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, just quick clarification. The numbers that we gave Commissioner Cullen were because we don't have great historical data on the amount of staff time or other kinds of city resources put into all special events, whether they come to fruition or not. The numbers that we gave him today were based off of staff sitting back and thinking about a future state where we might put our application fees in a place where we were doing full cost recovery, if that was the way that we were going. So it was an exercise to try to think that through. And so those numbers really represent from a very small event to a large event, just the amount of time and the dollar equivalent of that for staff to review the permit application. So it didn't include anything like Katie just mentioned about what happens after they get issued the application, nor did that number include any of those day of or day after costs that typically get invoiced to larger events. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Commissioner Burstein.
Yeah, I'd love to see some type of modeling of what the impact would be on fees, whether it's cost recovery or increase of permitting. And I do agree, it's a relatively small number right now. And I love the idea of having an inclusive community and making that more elastic rather than more restrictive or tight. And I also am very intrigued by the idea of a grant system so that there is some qualitative decision-making of how much to give to somebody or an organization and what it brings back to the community.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Westberg, last comments.
Thank you. I'll try to make it brief. when I first read through the policy, I was kind of leaning the way Peter was leaning, that if money is really tight, then we need to draw some lines, and the easiest way to do that is just to provide funding for the city-sponsored events. And then I looked at the list that Katie sent out, and frankly, there were some things on the list that I think should not have received a city subsidy. If and again, I'm not knocking any organization, but if you fund one charity's event, like to raise money for Parkinson's, then are you going to do, the next one that comes in the door or something like that? And there's an infinite number of them. But there were events on that list, like the homecoming parade, like the Art Uncorked event, like the Youth and Family Services Pumpkin Walk, that kind of tugged at my sense of community a little bit, because they were, and the commonalities in those events where they were homegrown, they were home organized, and they contributed, I think, greatly to a sense of community, and add a sense of richness to what life is like on Mercer Island. So I agree with Paul and what Peter mentioned, that I think we need a mechanism for accommodating events like that. And I don't think there would be a lot of them in the course of the year. And if that number starts to grow, then maybe we need to reevaluate that. But whether it's a grant program, or a separate budget line item, or something like that, I think you need to recognize that there may be some of these homegrown events that make a major contribution to our community and merit some support beyond permitting.
Thank you. Ryan?
Oh, I was on mute, sorry. Ryan Daly again. I just wanted to chime in, and Commissioner Westberg made some excellent points. I think you all obviously have as well. Thinking back, and I just kind of want to reflect back maybe 5-10 years ago, from the city's operations for special events, your Parks and Recreation Department delivered many more special events than it currently does, with a very small limited number. And so following 2018, we started to lean much more on our community partners to deliver those events. And so that has been sort of a short-term change as of recent to how things are delivered. And so I just wanted to highlight that for the commission as you start to deliberate on how this community receives their special events. So thank you.
Perfect. Emily, do you have any last comments at all, or about this, the conversation, or is that sort of what you were looking for?
Yeah, it was very, very helpful. That's exactly what we were trying to get from the conversation today. Chair, if I might, I'm going to share my screen briefly and just quickly go through a few last slides to make sure everybody knows what we're going to do next.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I will send this out in the packet. We don't need to spend more time on this tonight, but what staff and I will be working on next is trying to shape up a policy that represents the comments that you made tonight of there has to be some way that we can provide some appropriate level of assistance to community groups that are providing enriching, important, homegrown, whatever word you want to use, events to the community, and that are acting really as partners, like Ryan said, to the work that the Recreation Division continues to do. So we'll work on that. When you get a copy of this presentation, you will see a couple of slides that lay out some potential different approaches to shaping up a practice, the program that would accompany the policy. One thing that I did want to mention is D, neighborhood block parties. I anticipate that staff and I will kind of carve out an exception for neighborhood block parties. This has historically been an activity that the city has lent support to. And it has been treated differently than other types of special events. And I see that continuing in the future. We can talk more about that next time as well, how that operates now, how we'd envision it operating in the future. But I just wanted to highlight that as something that I perceive the city wanting to continue to support in the community. And there's equal opportunity for that. So I think it fits nicely with our intentions on this policy. So next step is we'll come back at a future meeting, tell you where we're at, give you hopefully some proposals to consider that have a little bit more meat on the bone. And then ultimately, we want to try to get back in front of City Council with some recommendations, again, as I said at the beginning, so that anything that needs to be incorporated into the next year's budget has an opportunity to be done. So with that, I will close out and turn it back over to you, Chair. Thank you all, commission members. That was very helpful.
Thank you, Emily. Jake, did you have something you quickly wanted to say before we go for a break?
Yeah, my question was, one of the last slides that Emily showed us talked about alignment with city's goals. And I'm not, and I haven't been through this part of the materials as deeply as I would like to have been, but I think, I don't know what we're referring to there. And I think for specificity purposes down the line, that would be helpful, because otherwise there are going to be a lot of questions at the city council level if that isn't fleshed out somewhat. So
thank you. All right, before we go on to the Luther Burbank docks, let's take a 10-minute break to stretch our legs, etc. So we will come back at 7:42. Thank you. Please turn off your microphones and videos.
How's your microphone doing, Andy?
You tell me, how's that sound?
Beautiful.
All right.
Anna, you want to give a test?
Yellow.
Loud and clear. Great.
All right, looks like we're all back. So let's go to the fourth item of business is the Luther Burbank Docs 30% Design first reading. We welcome Paul West, Capital Improvement Projects Manager, and consultants Andy Bennett and Anna Spooner.
Thanks, Chair McCarthy. Paul West, CIP Project Manager. I'm going to quickly turn this over to Andy and Anna, who are going to present the results of the DOC subcommittee's work with the design team. They will discuss the various aspects of the 30% design that they came up with. Go ahead, Andy.
All right. I'm Andy Bennett. I'm with KPFF Consulting Engineers, and we are the lead consultant on the team. Anna's with Anchor QEA, and they're helping us out with the Upland design and permitting and other pieces of that. So that's probably enough introduction. I think we've all talked to you before. So I will share my screen and get started. So can everybody see an aerial view of the docks at Luther Burbank Park? All right,
yes.
Good. So we got through an initial crack at the 30% design in August, and we thought we needed, or we wanted to run it past the city departments and other agencies who would be issuing the permits necessary to build the project. And we've been doing that for the past couple of months, getting some good feedback from them. And we think we have a path forward for the project. Made a few design tweaks along the way to make it easier to get through that process. And so that's kind of what we're going to go through today, rather than really starting at square one, which is kind of where we were way back when. But it's pretty easy to see where we are. And there we go. So the first part of it I'll talk about is the in-water work, and that's the docks, wave attenuator, the overwater stairs, and we got some feedback from the city, and it looks like we would like to go for a variance, actually a couple of variances on this project, where it doesn't quite comply with the letter of the shoreline code, but it certainly complies with the intent. So that's what we'll do. And then Anna will talk a little bit about the Upland design, the beach access, the plaza, the outdoor classroom, and some of the public art, some discussions that she had with the Arts Commission. So with that, one of the first features that we talked about was the putting some stairs all along this bulkhead here where the handsome bollards are, that would let people step down. The stairs would be the full width of this bulkhead to let people step down. And at summertime, you can see here the water level would be about flush with the lower stair, and give people a chance to get to the water without actually getting in it. These are not swimming stairs. It will be signed, no swimming. But it gets people closer to the water instead of the chain behind the handsome bollards kind of prevents a barrier. And so this lets people get to the water. We would leave, the handsome bollards would stay there, and a few pieces of chain would be removed to provide access to the stairs. So they would continue to be, an integral part of the plaza, an integral part of the experience. But they wouldn't be a barrier to the water. There would be a way for people to step from the plaza down, and you could sit on the bottom stairs and soak your feet, that kind of thing. It's just a little bit better experience from the plaza. To make that work, we would support the upper end on the bulkhead, make it flush with the plaza. So the top of the stair would be a straight walk out from the plaza, a couple of steps down. 7-inch rise is a pretty standard rise, or 18-inch stairs. So nice wide stairs, plenty of room to sit on the second or bottom stair and get your feet wet if you want. And a couple of pin piles supporting the outer edge, only 6-inch diameter, about like that. So pretty small, not a whole lot of environmental impact. And the stairs would be open grading, 60% open space, ADA compliant, to let light through. So we'd have minimal impacts on the habitat and salmon migration along the bulkhead. So that's something that we went through, and we've adapted the design to make it a little bit more accessible. The wider step lets someone, even in a wheelchair, get some of that experience. And we think this would be a really nice feature. It's a little bit of a challenge because it's new overwater coverage, even though it's graded. And so this gets into some of the permitting issues that we'll have to deal with. But because we had early discussions with the agencies, we think we can get through that. The next thing is with the docks, we heard a lot of feedback from the agencies that they really like graded surfaces. They don't like solid surfaces where you've got a solid surface, especially over a migration corridor, which is, just along the shore here. That's a from a habitat perspective, that's a big no-no. So we've done a couple of things to reduce the impact of the docks on the habitat and on migration. One of which is we will replace this first leg of the fixed pier with a graded surface. So get rid of the concrete that's there now, steel frame with an open grading to let light go through, so that as juvenile salmon are migrating along the shore, they don't have this tunnel that they have to go through where the concrete dock was. And that was something we added in response to the comments we got, and it was very well received. Other things are we moved all of the docks a little bit further offshore for the smaller, the docks for the small craft, the kayaks, sailboats, stand-up paddle boards, that sort of thing. There was a concern that being so close to shore, even though they're a little bit more than 30 feet offshore, but the bottom of the floats could make contact with some of the aquatic plants that are growing there. We didn't want that. And so we moved them a little bit further off. It also gets them out of that migration corridor to improve the shoreline function there for salmon, and everything would be graded. It was planned to be graded all along, but we thought, going forward, we need to show it as graded to emphasize that that's the case. For the wave attenuator, and there was another word we were using for this, but that's no longer part of the project vocabulary. What we learned about graded surfaces is that if you're in water 40 feet or deeper, it doesn't really matter because the light doesn't get to the bottom anyhow. And we couldn't really get it to 40 feet of water, but we moved it further offshore to get another 5 feet, so we're 35 feet of water. So we're really minimizing the impact of what could be a solid surface. We may end up grading some of it, but to provide that wave attenuation function, which is really to protect the inner dock from the vessel wake, from the passive vessel wakes in the channel, we really need a heavy dock that's not going to let a lot of light through. It's got to be concrete. The concrete, the mass of the concrete is really one of the key things that helps dampen the wave energy and protect the inner docks. The inner docks will be pretty light. They'll be low freeboard. And so if you got anybody who's familiar with wake surfing, where the boats go, not very fast with a whole lot of weight in the back of the boat to make the biggest wake possible, and then you just ride a surfboard there. So you're don't have a tow rope like you would with skiing or wakeboarding. Wake surfing, you're actually on a surfboard. To do that, you need a really, really big wake. And those really, really big wakes are very detrimental to someone who's trying to learn how to use a stand-up paddleboard. And the channel's not that wide here, so we really want to provide that kind of protection. So moving offshore to get into deeper water where the fact that we're not graded has less impact, but still showing that we will grate the fingers, we'll grate the gangway coming down and move it offshore. Those things all help reduce the impact of the wave attenuator out here. And it doesn't, that extra 5 feet really helps from a habitat perspective. It doesn't have that much impact from a structural perspective in terms of the number and size of piles. We can still get away with essentially the same piles. Wall thickness might be a little greater just to provide a little bit more stiffness, but we won't need bigger piles and we won't need more of them. So, so those are some of the things that we've done with the docks to make it better, make it a little bit easier to permit. And then getting to the variance. This is kind of one of the things that we're going to need approval on to pursue this. Quick background, the intent of the project is to get more people to the water and on the water, whether it's, like I said, the stand-up paddle boards or the kayaks or small sailboats, sailing programs, classes, other things that are going to activate the plaza and get people on the water. That's what the shoreline management program is intended to do, is to get people down. That's one of the state's goals for the program. And it's one of the things that the city code is intended to do. But the details of the city code, which were focused primarily on residential docks, didn't really lend themselves to what we're doing here. So we've got to ask for a variance. And this is really, some of the variances are to improve safety of the users of the dock, the people who are trying to get into the lake. The City Mercer Island Shoreline Code says that docks can't be wider than 6 feet. That really doesn't work for the inner floats, and I've got some graphics to show why. And for the outer float, the wider the float is, the better the wave attenuation is. There's also a requirement that light transmitting grating is present over 100% of the dock surface. As I mentioned, for the wave attenuator, you need mass to dampen that wave energy, and mass generally equals concrete when you're talking about floating structures. And yeah, we could put a graded surface on the concrete, but it doesn't do anything. Light can't get through. So that's another variance we'll need. And the last one is any fixed pier structure needs to be at least 18 inches above the ordinary high water mark. The whole goal of those stairs that I started with is to get people down to the water and let them really get their feet wet, as I mentioned. And you can't do that if you're 18 inches off the water. So, we'll need a variance for that requirement. And we've talked through all of this with the City of Mercer Island Planning Department, kind of showed them what we're trying to do. One of the agencies that has to approve the variance request is the Department of Ecology, because they manage the statewide shoreline management program. We met with them, we walked through this, and the feedback we got was, you definitely need a variance for the code. Your justifications are sound, and it looks like you could probably make a really good case. They can't bless it based on that. You've got to go through the process, but it was very encouraging to hear that. A couple of things real quick. The graph here on the left talks about how much energy gets through for a shallower float versus a wider float. And you can see the wider float only lets 28% of the energy through. The 6 foot wide float, which is what the code would require, lets 42% of the energy through. So that's a lot more energy coming in and moving around the float, moving around the people trying to learn how to stand up on a paddleboard, those kind of things. So wider is definitely better. We are going to have to provide standpipes on that outer float, the wave attenuator float, because it does more small power boats. So we need some standpipes to comply with Mercer Island Fire Code. The standpipe requires a 4 foot clear zone, which is exclusive of the walkway. And for ADA, the walkway is 42 inches wide. So if you add up 4 feet plus 42 inches, plus a little bit of room for the standpipe itself, you're at 8 feet. And so to comply with fire code, we need to be at least 8 feet wide. Ideally, for wave attenuation, we'd be 10 feet wide. 6 foot wide doesn't work for either of those reasons. On the inner dock, the 6 foot wide width applies to all docks, and the inner dock is intended to be used for sailing programs. And even the small sailing boats tend to have a 6 foot beam. So on a trailer, if somebody's coming down the dock with a boat, nobody else can be on that dock. You can't have two-way traffic. If they're coming down and you're on the dock, you're either going in the lake or, who knows where you're going to go. We need 8 feet wide so someone can at least stand to the side while the boat goes by. And then the 8 foot wide float is also going to be much more stable when you have crowding on one side. So when you've got an instructor in the kayak or on a paddleboard teaching a lesson and all the students are on the dock before they get on theirs, they're going to be on one side, and an 8 foot float won't lean nearly as much as a 6 foot float would lean in that kind of situation. And so that stability also stands when you're getting that residual wave energy. Whatever energy comes past the attenuator, the wider float will still be more stable. The 100% graded surface requirement, as I mentioned, the wave attenuator needs to be heavy to take out that energy. Basically, the energy that's lost is energy that moves the wave attenuator up and down. And the heavier it is, the more energy it takes to move it, so the less energy comes through. And so it wants to be concrete, and 100% graded surface just isn't going to work. We can get some, and we'll try to get some. There's some float designs that are concrete that have some open area that we could grade, but we're not going to get to the 100% graded. And the minimum structure height, to get that experience with the stairs need to actually touch the water at the summer. And so we're going to just make that case, and hopefully that'll work. Some of the mitigation that we talked about with them, and everybody kind of smiled and nodded, and nobody's going to give an answer now, but positive feedback. We can remove that piece of concrete dock near the shore, replace it with grading, and we've already added that to the program. So that's a piece of mitigation we've added. We've moved the floats into deeper water to reduce the impact of the lack of grading. There's derelict overwater coverage. There's other places we can do some cleanup or additional shoreline restoration. So these are things we would look for elsewhere in the park, just to, we are putting some new things in here. They want to see you doing something else to kind of offset that. So those are some of the things we can look at to do that, to make that offset. Again, this was, all this has been discussed with the agencies. Everybody kind of said, yep, that makes sense. We understand where you're coming from. And so there's a formal process to go through now, but it was very encouraging to hear what we heard. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna to talk about the changes to the Upland design, which you can see here. We're kind of flipped around because it's a little easier, but boiler building, Plaza, beach, and I'll keep controlling the presentation. So Anna, just let me know when you're done and you want to move on.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so this orientation, north is to the right and the water is down. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about a couple big areas and kind of go back real quick, sorry. So the beach access to the north, and some revisions there, and really just design development there. The plaza improvements, and then that outdoor classroom on-grade trail connection linking into the South Shoreline Trail and eventually to the plaza. So before I will step through this, kind of showing existing conditions with some notes to kind of show photos of what we're doing here. But if you go to that next slide. So this is the North Beach, and the existing condition here, as you can see, is a very narrow beach with limited shoreline access. if you go back to the plan, you can see that we've created an ADA trail connection leading from the plaza to the beach. And then we've expanded the beach upland to expand the beach area. So we've cut into the slope and built a slow rock wall and then vegetation behind that wall, so that at high water in the summer, when most folks are out there, there's space to park your boat. And then that trail connection is cut into the bank as well, to allow a 5-foot wide crushed gravel surface to the plaza. It also connects up to that existing shoreline trail that heads north. So a pretty big move for ADA access at the north end. The plaza, then we've improved the plaza with new paving, including pervious paving and concrete paving. So if you go to the next few slides, you can see some of that. So in this view, looking north, you can see the existing plaza. The improvements here are new lighting along the building and new bench seating, both along the building and also in that bump out area, having a new bench in that location. And then if you go to the next slide, you can see here where we're going to be having new pervious paving as well as new concrete paving, impervious paving. The overall square footage, we're going to do more pervious than concrete paving. We're also going to have a layer of silva cells beneath the pervious paving to infiltrate stormwater before it discharges into the lake. And that kiosk that's currently out there will be removed as part of the project. Go to the next slide. And here's the view to the outdoor classroom that's on the rooftop of the existing restroom, where the separate project with the Cardinal Architects to improve that rooftop and open it up for public access. And in this view, you would see there'll be a simple railing barrier at that outdoor classroom. Go to the next slide. And then coming down from that classroom behind the building will be a structural ramp coming down that will then meet an on-grade ramp. That'll be a low gradient, ADA accessible ramp that then heads down the hill. And the hill will be restored with new vegetation after the grading to put that ramp in. You can also see in this photo the place where we would put a new kiosk potentially, or not potentially, but would propose a new kiosk structure for information about the park and site. Go to the next. And then here at the south end, you can see again new pervious paving along the plaza in this location. And those 3 trees that are out there are proposed for removal. They're not in great condition. They don't really have enough soil to be healthy, vigorous trees. The new silva cells that I talked about previously will support the planting of one kind of a special one tree in the plaza that'll have a lot more space for its roots to grow and be a vigorous, healthy tree. Also in this photo, you can see at the left, the new signage that will mount to the concrete wall. So we kind of get stuff out of the plaza and open it up a bit. So that'll be a structural mount on the existing wall. And then in the background here, you see the area where the South Shoreline Trail, which is a separate project, but where that trail will come and connect with the plaza. And then you can see in that gray, we will connect to the on-grade pathway up to the rooftop classroom. We'll connect that across the driveway and down to the South Shoreline Trail. And then you can either go right or left back to the plaza or continuing to the south. And to build that pathway, we'll also regrade the lower portion of the driveway and resurface it, so with crushed gravel, in order to allow for that pathway to maintain ADA accessibility requirements. Go to the next slide. So here you can see that plan again. So you can see the pathway connection at the north that I talked about, the plaza improvements, and then at that south end, you can see that on-grade pathway connecting the outdoor classroom down the slope across the driveway into the South Shoreline Trail connection. And the design of that, the the length of that is to meet ADA requirements and to be a low gradient, low slope trail. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about would be the public art. So there are two elements that I wanted to talk about. The first is the handsome bollards. So those are highlighted this yellowish orange color. If you go to the next slide, Andy talked about how we would break the chain on those bollards in certain locations in order for folks to access the new overwater stairs. So we've identified 5 locations, and the idea is that we'll never, like, every hand will still hold a chain, but there'll be times when the hand only holds one chain. And so those 5 openings will each be, they're about 5 feet wide, and they'll allow folks to walk through out to those overwater stairs. And then that landing that Andy talked about, that 4-foot wide landing that's on grade with the plaza, will give people space to kind of come through the bollards and orient themselves and maybe just stay there or then walk down the steps. Go to the next slide. So here you can see another photo showing where those openings are in the purple arrows. So each hand still has a chain. Yeah, next one. So the other piece for public art is the opportunity to for integration of additional public art. And the plaza space really has a lot of potential to integrate public art. And this handsome bollard public art piece and this integration, Paul and I went and talked with the Arts Council in September and had a really good conversation about what we're thinking and kind of the opportunities out there. So if you go to the next slide, here's the plaza view as it is today. So a pretty open space, and we're trying to get things out of it. So we're taking that kiosk out, we're getting the sign out to really open it up more. Go to the next slide. And so what we talked about with the Arts Council was some potential themes that might be options for the public art integration. The one that was probably the most talked about was the idea of boating and boat construction and like a nautical theme to integrate that into the plaza. We also talked about local and regional geography and Mercer Island natural and cultural history. So really thinking a very site specific of the place idea that could then be integrated into an art form. And if you go to the next slide, we also talked about what that integration could look like. It could be, a standalone sculptural element, maybe at the entry to the plaza. It could be plaza treatment. So in the area where we're doing concrete paving, maybe we do a scoring pattern or we integrate this kind of embed metal into it, like you see here. There's also the idea of something on the building, either on the restroom or on the building at the site, and using tiles and murals to tell a story. And then finally, custom park elements. So the kiosks that we are removing and relocating, an opportunity there to design something that kind of speaks to this park and this place. That's it.
Great, thanks Andy and Anna. That was a thorough overview of the 30% design. I would just want to ask if the chair of the subcommittee has any additional comments, or if we can go ahead and open it up to the commission's questions.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I'm fine. Just let's open it up.
Okay, so this is the first run at this. We're gonna just present it tonight. Really, it's the time now for clarifying questions, and we will come back at a subsequent meeting to see if we have consensus on moving this on to City Council as an approved design from the Parks and Rec Commission. So there's really, this is just an open time to ask questions and see where we are at with the proposal.
Right. Thank you. It looks really neat. Okay, Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, thank you. Very, very good job. I got a couple of questions, just for clarification. The overwater stairs, I take it there's no ramp access for disabled people. Is that right?
At this
To get
point,
down to the water.
that's correct.
Okay, and is that something that could be done, or is that impossible given the space constraints and shoreline management things? Again, you don't have to answer it right now, but that occurred to me when you said how great it was going to be able to get people down to the water. So
maybe real quick on that one. I think two answers. One is we initially just had the stairs coming straight off the plaza. And so you went through those bollards and you went straight down the stairs. And we kind of recognized that that might be too abrupt and it might not really offer people to step through those bollards and be on the other side and kind of have that open feeling, particularly if you have mobility issues and you don't want to go down the stairs. And so we integrated that landing with that in mind to open up that access. We also thought about a ramp down. But we don't have an edge on these stairs. We don't have a railing. We don't have a bull rail on purpose currently, because if you put that rail in, it's a big visual block. And so to integrate a ramp and have someone going down that ramp when you don't have a rail or a bull rail has some concerns.
okay, so thank you. So just so I'm clear. So if somebody was a wheelchair user or even a, let's say a walker user, they wouldn't, well, walker probably, maybe they could get down there, but that would not be a recommended thing. So second question, the outer wave attenuator that Andy was talking about, what are the support structures like to secure that in place? And I asked this because of the support structures at Groveland and how, for example, there it's made it impossible to fish off of that just because of the structures. And you talked a little bit about how much support this concrete structure, for good reasons, would have.
Yeah, so it's still a floating structure. And so the vertical support just comes from buoyancy. It's a floating dock and there would be guide piles, roughly one every 20 feet. They would be recessed into the top of, into the float so that the outer edge was flat. So you could still moor vessels there, more small boats there, even where the guide piles were. And so it would be pile supported by being a monolithic float, or maybe it's built in a couple of sections, but it's big enough that it won't move that, it shouldn't move that much under these wave conditions. And in terms of support, it's buoyant support, and then it's steel guide piles holding it from moving laterally.
Let me be more specific. My question was confusing. If I was out there in the winter and there were no boats there and I wanted to fish by casting out, would I be able to do that without getting hung up all the time on whatever the pile structures are?
Yeah, if you're standing here and casting out, your line there wouldn't be anything to interfere with your line as you brought it back in. If that's your question.
Yes, that's what I meant. Thank you.
So can I just add some context for both Andy and Don? At Groveland, the wave attenuators there are anchored with C-flex anchors that come out at an angle. And so they do significantly affect the ability to fish off the pier because they're basically under the water as a entanglement hazard for fishing lines.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, we had considered C-flex anchors here actually, but we decided that to get the best performance out of the wave attenuator and working with our coastal engineer, we thought that it would be better just to have a concrete float with steel piles. So we would not have any anchors like that that could snag a fishing line coming in.
Yeah. Jody, I have two more questions, but I'm happy to wait till
Yeah.
other people have an opportunity.
Let's do Commissioner Burstein, and then we can come back.
This is Paul Burstein. Don, we can ping pong back and forth because I have a few questions as well. So on the steps to the water, is there any protection from that one dock on waves? Because the wave attenuator is not going to affect that area any way that I can see.
No, the wave attenuator would not protect the new stairs.
So the one concern I would have at Clark Beach, where there are stairs and the boat wakes, if you're on those stairs, they knock you off pretty substantially.
Do those stairs go all the way into the water, or do they stop at the water?
Yeah,
surface?
they go all the way in the water.
Okay.
My memory serves me correctly. The other question is, and it's not a if, it's more of a when people go swimming off those stairs. What are the risks associated with that?
I'll go to this view. So this is roughly to scale, and so the elevation of the seafloor right at the bottom of the stairs is 15 feet. In the summer, you're at 18.5 feet, so there's 3.5 feet of water there. So I guess one of the risks would be if somebody does a deep dive, they're going to hit the bottom. But if they just jump in, the water will, for an adult, it'll come up to somewhere around your waist when you're standing on the ground. Most people would probably just climb out here. We aren't planning to put a ladder here. So it's, we know that it will be very tempting to go swimming here. It's not designed for that. The other thing is that the water is deep enough, and one of the other benefits of having the wider stair at the top is if someone swam underneath it and then surfaced underneath, it's wider and it's a little bit bigger, so you would have place to come up for air and kind of get oriented and then realize, all right, I got to go back down and pop up on the outside. When we only had 3 steps and it was much closer, had you done that and come up inside it, it would have been really tight and a little bit harder to kind of get oriented before you swam back out. So we think that it's not a hazard for those people who do choose to swim, even though they shouldn't.
Right. Yeah, I love the idea of the stairs. I just want to make sure it's a safe environment for those who ignore the signs or don't see them or don't read them or don't care. Go ahead, Don. Or Chair, I should say. Back
Yep.
to the chair.
You guys work it out.
Okay. My next one is the graded docks. If you're going to seek a variance, as I understand it, seek a variance to the minimum of 18 inches above the ordinary high water mark, I take it that somebody would still be able to walk on those and not get splashed all over their feet. And that's part of what the wave attenuator out to the east would hopefully try to prevent. Is that true?
I think the 18-inch variance is only for fixed structures. So the only place that 18-inch clearance requirement comes into play is for the stairs. The rest of what we're doing is floating, and obviously floating structures are less than 18 inches from the surface. So, so just to be clear on what we're asking for with that particular variance, in terms of the elevation above waves for the graded docks, the intent of the wave attenuator is that if you're walking on these docks to launch your paddleboard or kayak, your feet should stay dry. You shouldn't get wave splashing through that grading. Conceivably it could. And, if you were there and there was a strong wind out of the south, which would be, coming from this direction, you might get a little bit of wave action through those. This dock is intended to be really easy to get on and off a stand-up paddleboard, so it's only got a freeboard of 9 inches. So it won't take that much of a wave to get a little bit of water coming through. But hopefully if you're watching a stand-up paddleboard, you should be ready to get your feet wet.
Yeah, thank you. This is Don Cohen again. I appreciate the importance of making things accessible as possible for paddle boarders and et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of people who are just going to walk out there who don't know what a paddle board or a sailboat or a whatever it is, and going to be walking out on all of these structures. And I understand what you're saying. We don't have any option. We can't. It has to be graded.
Right.
In that area, but at least if we can be mindful that there are a variety of uses, not just the use of small watercraft and kayaks, paddle boards, and so forth. So
Yeah, and the outer dock will be more stable, and then it'll be solid, so it'll be drier. But point taken.
Right, I'm going to jump into your flow here and have Commissioner Marks and give her comments.
Thanks. I really like it. I'm excited to see the changes that are going to be made. It's really cool. I had a couple questions, probably very quick answers. So is there any change to the bathrooms or the boiler room? You didn't talk about that, but.
The bathrooms are the architectural work will include improvements to the bathroom and a little bit of cleanup of the concessionaire space, correct, Paul?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, and the boiler room's getting like earthquake retrofitted, or is that right?
That's right. That's a separate project, but it's happening in and around the same time frame as this work will be happening.
Okay, cool. I guess I'm just thinking, with good reason, I would assume you'd have more people down on the docks with the new design than you do currently. I go by there, I don't know, probably at least once a week in the summer from the water side, and it doesn't seem like it gets a lot of use. And I'm just picturing, it'd be great, like if you had sailboat, sailing classes. I don't know what the plan is, but anyway, I'm picturing that there's going to be a lot more people there. And I know this is not just me, but like just talking to some friends, or most people in at least my peer group have talked about how nice it would be if there was like coffee down there and you could sit on the dock and, enjoy a cup of coffee. And I know with this group, when we reviewed some of the input for the pros plan, concessions were kind of like a weird, like people wanted more bathrooms, but I think there had been discussion about like food concessions, and it wasn't there wasn't a lot of interest in it. But I do think that this is one area where it seems like in the summer, especially, you could, if you want to have people there or have classes of kids or, more people hanging out, I could see this being like the ideal spot for it as a social gathering place. So I don't know what the plan is, and it's not really part of the design. I'm just commenting as like, clearly it seems to me it's going to bring in more people, and thinking about how we might use the space. Great, though. I really like the design. And I'm sure people will swim off those stairs, but that's okay.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Burstein.
This is Paul Burstein. Just a quick clarification. Anna, you mentioned boats in the North Cobble Beach. And by the way, that Cobble Beach access and expansion is tremendous, because that's just an underutilized area that's tight and just a wonderful area to walk, sit, swim, whatever. But you mentioned boats, and I just want to clarify, are you thinking boats other than kayaks that are listed in the design? Is there going to be a place to bring small sailboats or other watercraft? Or is it just kayaks?
I mean, the idea is that it would be people bringing, like walking their boats in. So we talked about paddle boards and kayaks.
Okay.
And then they can lay them on the beach while they get ready and then launch from there.
Got it. Great, thank you.
I'll just add that this is Luther Burbank Park is on the Lakes to Locks Water Trail, and this is one of the trailheads for the Lakes to Locks Water Trail. So it's not really, it's basically any human powered craft is welcome to land here, but I think that's the intention, is to limit it to that.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Cohen.
Two more quick ones. In this picture, and I didn't quite follow when Andy was talking about there was going to be a sort of a low bulkhead or something. Are you still going to be able to get down here to like skip a rock?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So we're not going to be doing any work waterward of Ordinary High. It's all upland. We're all cutting back to expand the beach area and to improve the access.
Okay. My last question really is more directed toward Paul than it is to the design people. And because every time we see the north dock referenced, it says this is for mooring large power craft. And I just want to be sure that it isn't going to say this is just for mooring large power craft. So I mean, we want to make it open for somebody who, as long as it isn't impairing somebody else's use, for sunbathing, for small boats if they can't find space in some of the other areas, or just for viewing the lake and so forth. So I just want to emphasize that again, that this is making it better for large power craft, but not exclusive.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, does anybody else have any comments that they want to make? All right, then I think we'll move on. I think I'm really excited with what you guys have come up with. It looks really cool.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The fifth item of business is the 2022 planning and meeting schedule.
Good evening again, Parks and Recreation Commission. I don't have any updates for the planning and meeting schedule. It was included in your packet for reference, so you know a little bit of where we are heading as a group. You'll notice that there is some, I don't want to call it free time as we get toward the end of the year, but I do anticipate some work items to be placed into those slots. You'll also notice that there are a couple of joint meetings that I'm working with the chairs of those other boards and commissions to set up. So more information to come out on that, and I'll put holds on your calendars accordingly. So any questions on the planning schedule? Look at us moving forward. Chair, if I might just keep moving.
Great.
Okay. Allow me 1 second to share my screen.
Let's hope that it works.
You're always messing with me, Chair McCarthy. Don't jinx me.
Woo!
Okay. So you see the way it should look, I should say.
It's there. It looks good.
Perfect. All right. I'm just getting organized here on my screen. Okay. Wow, it snowed. Our parks crews were out clearing trails, clearing different areas. So that's a photo of our team there jumping into action. But I did make a mistake as we moved forward with the pros plan and the recommendation you will be delivering to City Council. We didn't even recognize the significance of that when it just occurred. So I do just want to call out the commission as well as Councilmember Jacobson for your work on this project. It probably took much longer than we all anticipated, but Your work has been well worth it, and not quite done yet because we still have another meeting with the handoff to the city council. But to this point, excellent job on this significant project. Community Center grand opening, grand opening, I guess I should say. The Community Center hours have expanded. You'll recall at the last meeting, I'm getting a lot of feedback somewhere. Sorry. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Thumbs up from Peter? Okay. So you'll recall at the last meeting, we were prepared to significantly open the community center operating hours, expand them. Unfortunately, last week, it was still 2021. And of course, what that means is things change. And we had 2 staff members who ended up getting what I'd call career positions elsewhere, which is excellent for them. But unfortunately, that left us in a little bit of a lurch here at the community center. And so we had to take a slower approach to expanding our hours. But that didn't stop us from expanding our services. So currently, the community center is open as a community center. We have the ability, and we're encouraging people to come in, enjoy the facility, as well as the different scheduled programming that we offer. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But as we bring on these staffing positions, the hours and the services will continue to increase. And I foresee that taking probably toward the end of February, we'll be in a position that we're maybe where we expected to be as of today. So I will keep the commission updated on that. And most of you all saw my novel of an email that kind of laid out what that process was and what things were looking like as we expand services. Community center rentals, I'm actually looking out my window right now. We have a volleyball rental in the gym. So we are up and running there. It's great to see. The Mercer room and meeting rooms, we're still anticipating accepting reservations beginning in February for availability that will be in May. And so I say expecting because things often change, but that's the goal we're currently working toward. Continuing with the expanded services, as I mentioned, the facility's open as a community center now. You can come in, you can play ping pong, you can play pool, you can enjoy the game room, card games, you can hang out, have a cup of coffee, sit and talk with me. Come on by, it is truly a community center again. The fitness center, people were waiting literally before we opened the doors on Tuesday to come in and utilize the fitness center. So that's back up and running. It's definitely demonstrating that there was a community need to have that facility back opened up. In respect to the community center, one thing I do want to mention is the locker rooms are actually still closed to the public. Our restrooms are open, but our showers and locker room are closed. We still are housing some of the public work crews in different rooms here at the community center, and they're utilizing that facility separate the public. But coming on later this year, we're expanding our special event offerings as we discussed through the budget process, and then also our summer camps for later on this year. So more information that'll continue to be updated at the website, mercerisland.gov/recreation. We heard earlier tonight some individual program users who had questions or concerns, I should say, about how we allocate the space in the gym. And I want to touch real briefly on this, on what our rationale is and what the actual schedule is for all programs, not just the individuals who may feel that their programs were reduced. So in 2021, the community center was offering only 4 different drop-in programs. And those 4 programs were occupying all of the operating hours that we had for the facility during that time. We'll call them quick hitters. We knew that there were programs, volleyball, open gym, badminton, and volleyball, that were going to be very successful from the second we put them in. And quite honestly, we could take almost any one of those individual programs, give them the whole gym for the entire year, and they'd probably still be just as successful. That's not our goal. For 2022, our scheduling, the staff applied the community center facility allocation and use policy, which you all are very familiar with, and implemented those guiding principles to how we set the schedule. Some of the previously existing programs, or exciting programs apparently, had hours that were reduced. And this was to enable other programs, different programs, to have the same opportunity at facility space. Some programs, pickleball is an example, which had a significant amount of time from not just this last year, but previous years, did see a fairly significant reduction in how we were able to accommodate some of these new program offerings. Just to remind the commission and the public, we are committed as a staff to reviewing our schedules quarterly and ensuring they're in alignment with our usage policies and also with the community needs. So I just want to share with you what that schedule looks like. And I don't know how well this is showing up on your screens, but this is a breakdown of what the weekly gym schedule looks like. And it will change, it will expand as we bring on additional resources, specifically when you look at that Monday where we're closed and Sundays when we're closed. Sundays will accommodate rentals. We won't be open for general public hours, but the rest of the time you can see how that's all penciled in there for the various programs. The spreadsheet below that demonstrates the number of hours that each program has within the gym. So using pickleball as an example, they currently occupy 6 hours a week in the West Gym and 6 hours per week in the East Gym for a total of 12 hours. That's 17% of our total bookings, which is also the highest of any of the other programs. And you can kind of see how that's broken out there elsewhere. I'll be the first to admit these program schedules are not perfect. They never will be. But our goal as staff is to balance in the best manner possible so that everyone can have an opportunity. And we have a good problem right now. And that problem is many of our programs are successful. We have a lot of people attending volleyball. We have just as many attending badminton. So it's important that we offer those opportunities to those user groups. You'll also notice that we have differing age groups being accommodated, specifically senior volleyball or youth basketball. That's a differentiation that we're making to accommodate some of those users. So I just wanted to give a very high level update to the commission so that you have an opportunity to sort of reflect on the information that's being provided to you, both from the public, but also from what our facility schedules are. So I just want to leave it open. If commissioners have questions about any of this information, reach out to me. Happy to talk with you, or Chris DeLon can provide that info as well. Commissioner Cohen, I see a hand.
Yes, thank you, Don Cohen. So you said before, Ryan, that the times available for different programs were rebalanced to enable some new programming and so forth. So what are the new ones on this list? Is that like the senior volleyball, the senior gym walking, the youth basketball? Are those new ones?
Yes, those are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, indoor playground being the other big one that we hadn't offered in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners? Perfect. You know my phone number. Give me a call. Happy to chat. And
I have a question. Sorry, I have a question, Ryan. I put my hand up. Joe McCarthy. I just was wondering, he commented about the senior discount going away. And so it sounds like the pricing also changed a little bit too.
Yes, we did apply the differential pricing policy. So we still do offer a resident, non-resident rate. Those are the two different rates we offer specific to drop-in programs. The fitness center, you'll recall, is a tier 4, I think, off the top of my head, on our pyramid. And that actually just has one standard rate for all. And we use that for the cost recovery evaluation that we've gone through.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Mercerdale Playground. I owe specifically Chair McCarthy, Commissioner Cohen, an apology. You both showed up very early on the day the train was going in. It was freezing cold. I think we stood around for an extra 2 hours waiting for it to happen. Thank you, as well as some other community members who were there to see the train go in. It was actually pretty exciting. So in mid-December, the crews finished that installation. The rest of the play structures are still being installed. We had, of course, holidays, snow, cold weather, which all affected that timeline. The challenge we're under right now is for the surfacing to go in. And of course it takes dry weather and 50 degrees, which I don't feel like we've seen in a while. So we're gonna keep our eyes open for that window to come into play and move forward with hopefully completing this project by late February. And you can see the Let's Talk page is still there, and you can track it there to understand all of the updates that are occurring. 2021 Illuminate MI, very, very big success. This was a great event. The city was able to partner with a significant number of our local businesses and groups to provide this event. Some of those opportunities included the Harvest Market, the Letters to Santa, Yoga Bliss, Practices of Gratitude, Lights at Aljoya, the YFS Foundation Tree Lot, Small Business Saturday, Lights Up at the J, the menorah lighting, and First Friday Art Walks, Holiday Merchant Walk, the Storybook Walk, the Girl Scouts Toys for Tots Drive, Carolers at the Thrift Shop, the MIPA Holiday Lights Map, the MIHS Choir Performance. There was a lot. I mean, it was something that I have to give Katie Herzog a lot of credit that she pivoted from where we were, what we were anticipating from an event standpoint, was able to deliver something for the community in this manner that was very safe and a great opportunity for everyone to be engaged. So thank you to everyone who participated and provided for this event. And here's some of our sponsors. We were very fortunate to raise over, I believe the count was $21,000 last I had heard. These are your key sponsors here. Island Books, John L. Scott, the Mercer Apartments, and Riot Games. Riot Games came in right at the end with a very sizable sponsorship. The JCC, Sotheby's, Realogics, and Aljoya all supported this event. And we greatly appreciate it as a recreation department, and I know that the community appreciated their sponsorships as well. So, and with that, I would just say happy 2022. One of my best days of the year was cruising around, seeing all the people in the snow, enjoying our parks. So thank you again, and I will pass it back to you, Chair McCarthy.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, so our final item of business is commissioner reports and work plan updates. Commissioners, do you have anything to report? Mr. Cohen.
Well, I want to just thank the committee, the subcommittee on the Luther Burbank thing. I don't think that we did that specifically, but I appreciate the work that they put in. The other thing, it was more of a question. On the west side of the community center, what are those big vat things, Ryan? You know, they look like copper, beer vats.
Oh, now you're speaking my language. Are you talking right at the entrance?
Yeah, just to the south of the entrance, right?
Those it's a public art piece. I believe it came off of the space shuttle. I'd have to look at the plaque again. There's a really cool plaque underneath it. It's been a couple of years actually since I've read it and looked at it, but yes.
Okay, I thought it was a utility related structure. Okay, I'll have to look at it more closely. Thank you.
Perfect. Councilmember Jacobson, did you have a comment? No? I'm gonna guess not. Does anybody else have anything that they wanted to say?
This is Jake. I just want to, on behalf of my colleagues, the city council, thank you for the work that you guys have put in all year, all last year and this year in getting us the pros plan. You've made our lives a good bit easier, and it's really smoothed the way to get this done and get it on the record and move on. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't say that the way that the Luther Burbank dock thing is proceeding is very, very impressive to me, and the dock subcommittee should pat themselves on the back as hard as they can. So thanks for all what you guys do. Your work has been phenomenal.
Thank you. I agree. I'm much appreciated to the Luther Burbank dock subcommittee for taking that off of our plates. All right. So the next meeting that we have is the commission's joint meeting with the city council on Tuesday, January 18th at 5 p.m. The next regular Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is February 3rd, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. The time is now 8:47 and the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder to commissioners, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening and stay safe and healthy.